There is a strange and almost embarrassing truth buried at the center of human desire, one that most people spend their entire lives refusing to examine directly, precisely because examining it honestly would force an uncomfortable confrontation with how little control we actually exercise over our own wanting. The truth is this: we very rarely desire things because of their inherent, objective qualities. We desire them because someone else desires them first, because they appear scarce, because they seem just beyond our reach, because the possibility of having them has been placed delicately, deliberately, or accidentally just outside the boundary of what feels certain and secure. Remove the scarcity, remove the competition, remove the sense of an ending that might close off the possibility forever. And the very same object, the very same person, the very same opportunity that once consumed our every waking thought frequently reveals itself to be considerably less compelling than we believed. This is the law of covetousness, one of the oldest, most reliable, and most consistently underestimated forces shaping human behavior, operating quietly beneath nearly every domain of desire: romantic attraction, professional ambition, the accumulation of wealth and status, even the most ordinary daily choices about what to want and what to value. To understand this law properly is to gain access to one of the most powerful tools available to anyone seeking to understand, influence, or simply protect themselves from the manipulation of human longing, because once you recognize how thoroughly desire depends on perceived scarcity and the presence of rivals rather than on the intrinsic qualities of whatever is desired, you begin to see this mechanism operating everywhere, in your own life and in the lives of everyone around you, with a clarity that, once achieved, can never quite be unlearned. To understand why human desire operates this way, we must look beneath the surface of individual psychology and into something considerably older: the evolutionary architecture that shaped human motivation across an almost unimaginable span of time. Long before modern conditions of relative abundance and individual choice ever existed. For the overwhelming majority of human evolutionary history, resources, food, mates, status within the group, territory, existed in genuine and often desperate scarcity. An organism that evolved to value only what was already secured, what required no competitive effort to acquire, would have been catastrophically outcompeted by organisms wired to notice, desire, and pursue precisely those resources that others were also competing for. Because in a world of genuine scarcity, the things worth having were, almost by definition, the things other people wanted too. This produced, across countless generations of selective pressure, a psychological architecture deeply and permanently attuned to social proof as a primary signal of value. We are, at the level of our most basic motivational wiring, creatures who calculate desirability not through careful, independent assessment of an object's intrinsic qualities, but through careful, often unconscious observation of what others around us seem to want, what appears contested, but seems to be slipping away or growing scarce. This mechanism, so useful across the conditions in which it evolved, continues operating with full force in the modern world. Even though modern conditions of relative abundance have, in countless domains, rendered the underlying signal considerably less reliable than it once was. Consider first how this mechanism operates within romantic attraction, because it is here that the law of covetousness produces some of its most visible, most consistently observed, and most frequently misunderstood effects. Anyone who has spent meaningful time observing romantic dynamics has likely witnessed the following pattern, repeated with almost mechanical consistency across countless individual cases. A person who has shown limited or sporadic interest in a particular romantic prospect suddenly experiences a dramatic surge of interest the moment that prospect appears to attract the attention of someone else, or the moment that prospect signals, through words or behavior, diminishing interest in being pursued. This pattern confuses and frustrates a great many people, who experience it from the receiving end as a particularly cruel form of inconsistency. The very behavior that seemed, at the time, to drive a romantic interest away. Gradual reduction of pursuit, the redirection of attention elsewhere, calm acceptance of apparent rejection, frequently produces the opposite effect of what intuition would predict, generating a sudden, often intense return of interest, precisely because it removes the comfortable certainty that the relationship in question was permanently, unconditionally available, without effort or risk. This is not, as it might initially appear, simple cruelty or contrariness on the part of human desire. It reflects, instead, the underlying logic of covetousness operating with mechanical precision. Certainty, in matters of desire, functions as a kind of poison, slowly draining the perceived value of whatever has become certain, while uncertainty, the genuine possibility of loss, the presence of competing interest, the sense that an opportunity might close, functions as a kind of fuel, intensifying desire precisely in proportion to how genuinely uncertain the outcome appears. This single insight explains a tremendous range of romantic behavior that otherwise appears genuinely irrational. It explains why relationships characterized by excessive, unconditional availability and reassurance from one partner frequently produce diminishing, rather than increasing, affection from the other, even when that diminishing affection runs directly counter to both partners' stated, conscious desires for the relationship to flourish. It explains why brief periods of genuine uncertainty, a delayed response, a moment of ambiguity about another person's feelings, frequently produce more intense engagement and attention than the same relationship would generate under conditions of complete, stable security. It explains why romantic interest so frequently intensifies dramatically the moment a partner announces, genuinely or strategically, the presence of competing romantic attention, regardless of how secure and satisfied the relationship had previously seemed. It is worth pausing here to address directly an important and frequently misunderstood nuance, because the law of covetousness, improperly applied, produces relationships built on manufactured insecurity rather than genuine connection, an outcome considerably more destructive than valuable. The skillful application of this principle does not involve manufacturing artificial scarcity through deception, through the deliberate fabrication of rival interest that does not genuinely exist, or through the systematic withholding of affection specifically calculated to manipulate another person's anxiety. Such tactics, beyond their ethical problems, frequently prove unsustainable and ultimately corrosive to the very relationship they are intended to strengthen, because they require an ongoing performance of deception that, once discovered, typically destroys trust far more thoroughly than any temporary increase in desire could ever compensate for. A more sophisticated and more durable application of this law involves something considerably more honest: the simple, consistent maintenance of your own independent life, your own genuine interests, ambitions, and social connections that exist entirely apart from any single relationship, romantic or otherwise. A person who maintains genuine independence, who does not organize his entire existence around a single relationship to the exclusion of all other meaningful pursuits and of connections, naturally generates the kind of authentic, non-manufactured scarcity that the law of covetousness responds to, not because he is performing scarcity as a manipulative tactic, but because his attention and availability are in fact genuinely limited by the legitimate demands of a full, independently meaningful life. This is scarcity rooted in genuine substance rather than manufactured deception, and it produces as a natural byproduct rather than as a calculated manipulation. Exactly the quality of perceived value that more desperate, more available behavior consistently fails to generate. Consider, second, how the law of covetousness operates within professional and competitive contexts, where its effects, while less commonly discussed than its romantic applications, prove equally consistent and equally consequential. Examine carefully the dynamics surrounding job offers, business opportunities, and professional advancement, and you will observe a pattern that repeats with remarkable consistency across industries and eras. Opportunities that appear genuinely scarce, genuinely contested by multiple qualified candidates, generate dramatically more enthusiasm, urgency, and perceived value among decision-makers than identical opportunities presented as readily, unconditionally available. A candidate who has clearly attracted competing interest from other employers, even when that tantorist, competing interest plays no direct role in the actual evaluation of his qualifications, frequently receives more favorable consideration, faster decision-making, and more generous terms than an equally or even more qualified candidate who appears to have no other Texas Rangers, no competing interest, and therefore, in the eyes of decision-makers, operating according to the deep logic of covetousness rather than purely objective assessment, less validated, less contested, and therefore less valuable. This dynamic extends with equal force into business negotiations of every kind. A seller who can credibly demonstrate genuine interest from multiple potential buyers consistently extracts more favorable terms than an identical seller, offering an identical product or service, who presents himself as eager, available, and lacking alternative options. A negotiator who maintains genuine alternatives, who does not allow himself to become so emotionally and practically dependent on a single deal that its potential loss would constitute genuine catastrophe, negotiates from a position of authentic strength precisely because that strength derives from real, substantive alternatives rather than from performed indifference. This is among the most consistently confirmed principles in the entire study of negotiation. A party who needs the deal less, who has genuine, substantive alternatives available, who is not visibly desperate for this particular outcome above all others, virtually always secures more favorable terms than the party operating from genuine or perceived desperation, regardless of the underlying merits of each party's actual position. This brings us to a critical and frequently overlooked strategic insight. The perception of scarcity and competition matters considerably more in determining how desirable something appears than the underlying objective quality of whatever is being evaluated. This is not properly understood an invitation toward fraud or deception, manufacturing false scarcity through outright lies about competing interest that does not actually exist. It is, rather, a critical insight into a feature of human psychology that any serious strategist must account for. That objective quality alone, however genuinely impressive, frequently fails to generate proportionate perceived value in the absence of the social proof and competitive validation that scarcity and contested interest reliably provide. A wise approach, therefore, involves the cultivation of genuine alternatives, genuine competing interest, and genuine independent value wherever authentically possible, recognizing that this genuine scarcity, rather than its fabricated counterfeit, produces durable and ethically sound advantage precisely because it reflects substantive reality rather than manufactured illusion. Consider, third, how the law of covetousness operates within the broader domain of status, wealth, and material acquisition, where it produces some of the most paradoxical and most philosophically instructive effects of all. It has been observed across countless studies of consumer psychology and across centuries of accumulated commercial wisdom that the perceived value of goods and experiences correlates far more closely with their scarcity, exclusivity, and the visible desire of others to acquire. them than with any objective measure of their underlying utility or quality. The entire architecture of luxury commerce depends almost entirely on this principle, deliberately constraining supply, deliberately cultivating waiting lists and exclusive access, deliberately associating products with desirable, high-status individuals whose visible desire for the product generates, through the mechanism of covetousness, a corresponding desire among observers who would otherwise have remained entirely indifferent to an identical product, lacking this carefully cultivated scarcity and social validation. This mechanism extends with equal force into the more intimate domain of personal status and ambition. Consider how frequently a particular career path, a particular skill, a particular social circle suddenly attracts intense interest and competition the moment it becomes associated with success, prestige, and the visible desire of people whose judgment is held in high regard, regardless of whether the underlying activity has changed in any meaningful way. The same profession that attracted minimal interest when perceived as unglamorous and accessible to nearly anyone, frequently experiences a dramatic surge in competitive interest the moment it becomes associated with scarcity, exclusivity, and high visible demand from individuals whose choices others are inclined to imitate. This produces a genuinely important and frequently overlooked strategic insight for anyone seeking to build lasting value, whether in a career, a business, or a personal reputation. Positioning matters at least as much as substance, and in many cases considerably more, in determining how your genuine accomplishments and capabilities are actually perceived and valued by others. A genuinely talented individual who makes himself excessively available, who appears desperate for opportunity, who fails to cultivate any sense of scarcity or selective access around his time and attention, frequently struggles to secure recognition and reward proportionate to his actual underlying capability, while a considerably less capable individual who has successfully cultivated an aura of scarcity, exclusivity, and contested demand frequently secures recognition, opportunity, and reward disproportionate to his actual underlying merit. This is, it must be acknowledged directly, one of the more uncomfortable truths embedded within the law of covetousness, because it suggests that human judgment, even among ostensibly rational, sophisticated decision-makers, remains considerably more susceptible to the superficial signals of scarcity and social validation than most people would comfortably admit. Yet acknowledging this uncomfortable truth proves considerably more useful than denying it, because it points toward a genuinely actionable strategic principle: cultivating authentic scarcity around your own time, attention, and availability, rather than simply hoping that underlying merit alone will eventually receive its proportionate recognition, represents an essential and frequently neglected component of building lasting value and reputation in any competitive domain. Consider, fourth, the particular and instructive case of desire that has been definitively, permanently foreclosed, because here the law of covetousness produces some of its most intense, if also its most psychologically complex, effects. There exists a particular variety of longing, considerably more intense and considerably more persistent than ordinary desire, that attaches specifically to opportunities, relationships, or possibilities that have become genuinely, irreversibly unavailable. The path not taken, the relationship definitively ended, the opportunity that is permanently closed. This particular intensification of desire in response to permanent foreclosure reflects something important about the underlying psychological mechanism we have been examining throughout this study. While ordinary scarcity, the kind that remains genuinely contested and genuinely uncertain, generates desire through the anxious, motivating possibility that the desired object might still be obtained through sufficient effort. Permanent foreclosure generates a different, and in some ways more painful, variety of desire. 1. Unmoored from any realistic possibility of actual pursuit or acquisition, and therefore free to expand, in memory and imagination, well beyond whatever proportionate value the foreclosed possibility would likely have actually provided had it remained genuinely available. This explains a phenomenon many people experience with genuine bewilderment: the tendency to romanticize, often quite extravagantly, relationships, career paths, or opportunities that, while they remained genuinely available and uncertain, generated considerably more ordinary, measured interest, but that, once definitively foreclosed, suddenly acquire a weight, a significance, and an intensity of imagined value that bears little proportion to how these same possibilities were actually experienced and evaluated while they remained genuinely open. Understanding this mechanism offers considerable protection against one of the more painful and persistent forms of human regret, the tendency to construct, in retrospect, an idealized and almost certainly inaccurate account of foreclosed possibilities. An account inflated, precisely, by the permanent unavailability of the foreclosed option rather than by any genuine, careful assessment of what that option would actually have provided had it remained available and been pursued to its actual conclusion. There is a related and equally instructive variant of this pattern worth examining closely: the curious tendency for desire to intensify, almost perversely, at the precise moment an object or relationship begins to slip away through someone else's deliberate withdrawal, even when that same object or relationship had, until that withdrawal began, generated only modest interest. Consider how often a person discovers the true depth of their attachment to a job only once, handed notice of termination, the true depth of their attachment to a partnership only once. The partner announces an intention to leave, the true depth of their attachment to a skill or pursuit only once circumstances threaten to take it away entirely. This is not coincidence, nor is it evidence that the underlying object suddenly acquired new value at the precise moment of its departure. It is, rather, further confirmation of the same underlying mechanism, that perceived value depends overwhelmingly on the presence or absence of genuine scarcity and threatened loss, considerably more than it depends on any stable, independent assessment of intrinsic worth, conducted while the object in question remained safely, comfortably secured. Consider too how this mechanism explains the curious behavior of crowds and markets, phenomena that, examined individually, person by person, would appear to consist of independent, rational actors making careful, deliberate assessments of value, but that, examined collectively, frequently display behavior considerably better explained by the contagious, self-reinforcing logic of covetousness than by any careful, independent calculation of underlying worth. Financial bubbles, fashion trends, sudden surges of interest in particular ideas, careers, or cultural movements all frequently display the same underlying signature: value perceived not through independent assessment, but through observation of what others are visibly, urgently pursuing, producing a cascading, self-reinforcing cycle in which rising visible demand generates further demand, entirely independent of whatever genuine underlying merit the object of this collective desire may or may not actually possess. Understanding this collective dimension of covetousness offers considerable protection against one of the more costly mistakes available to any ambitious individual: mistaking the visible enthusiasm of a crowd for reliable evidence of genuine underlying value, rather than recognizing that crowd enthusiasm precisely because it operates through the same mechanism of contagious, scarcity-driven desire we have examined throughout this study, frequently inflates, far beyond what careful, independent assessment would actually justify, and frequently deflates, with equal and sometimes devastating speed, the moment that collective attention, for whatever reason, begins to shift elsewhere. Having examined how thoroughly the law of covetousness shapes human desire across romantic, professional, material, and collective domains, we must now turn to a question of considerable practical importance. How does one apply this understanding constructively, both in influencing the perceptions of others and, perhaps more importantly, in protecting oneself from being manipulated by precisely this mechanism operating in the hands of others who understand it, whether consciously or instinctively, and are prepared to exploit it for their own advantage? The first essential application involves the deliberate cultivation of genuine scarcity around your own time, attention, and availability across every domain where you seek to be valued, whether romantic, professional, or social. This does not require manufacturing false unavailability through deception. It requires, instead, the considerably more substantive work of building a genuinely full, independently meaningful life, one in which your attention toward any single person, opportunity, or pursuit reflects genuine selectivity, rooted in legitimate competing demands on your time and interest, rather than desperate, unconditional availability, rooted in the absence of any meaningful alternative. This genuine scarcity, because it reflects authentic substance rather than performed manipulation, generates durable rather than fragile perceived value. Value that withstands scrutiny precisely because it is not, in fact, a performance at all. The second essential application involves recognizing and resisting the law of covetousness. When it operates upon you, particularly in contexts where another party has a clear strategic interest in manufacturing a sense of urgency or scarcity that may not, in fact, accurately reflect underlying reality. This requires developing the discipline to ask, in any situation where you find yourself experiencing a sudden, intense surge of desire, whether that desire genuinely reflects the underlying merits of whatever you are considering, or whether it has been generated, instead, by an artificially constructed sense of scarcity, competition, or imminent loss that a more careful, dispassionate assessment would reveal to be considerably less significant than your activated emotional state currently suggests. Sales tactics, romantic manipulation, and competitive professional pressure alike frequently depend on triggering exactly this reflexive intensification of desire in response to manufactured scarcity, and the capacity to recognize this mechanism as it operates upon you rather than simply experiencing it as an authentic, trustworthy signal of genuine value provides considerable protection against decisions made under the influence of artificially inflated urgency. The third essential application involves recognizing the particular vulnerability that excessive availability and reassurance create within your own important relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional, and calibrating your behavior accordingly, not through manipulative withholding, but through the maintenance of genuine boundaries, genuine independent pursuits, and genuine selectivity that reflects an authentically full and meaningful life rather than a calculated performance designed purely to manipulate another person's desire. Relationships built on genuine mutual respect for each partner's independent life and independent value tend to sustain healthier, more durable levels of desire and engagement than relationships organized around one partner's complete, unconditional availability and the corresponding erosion of perceived value that such complete availability, however well-intentioned, reliably produces. The fourth essential application involves applying particular skepticism to your own retrospective evaluations of foreclosed opportunities, recognizing that permanent unavailability itself, independent of any genuine reassessment of underlying value, reliably inflates the perceived significance of whatever has been lost. This skepticism proves particularly valuable When evaluating major life decisions, career changes, or relationship endings, where the temptation to romanticize a foreclosed alternative precisely because it has become permanently unavailable, rather than because careful reassessment reveals it to have been genuinely superior, frequently produces persistent, unproductive regret entirely disproportionate to what the foreclosed alternative would likely have actually provided had it been pursued to its genuine conclusion. The fifth essential application involves cultivating a healthy distrust of collective enthusiasm as a primary signal of underlying value, particularly in financial, professional, and cultural domains where crowds, markets, and fashions frequently inflate desire through the same contagious, self-reinforcing mechanism we have examined throughout this study. Before committing significant resources, time, or emotional investment to a pursuit, primarily because it currently enjoys widespread, visible enthusiasm, it is worth asking whether your own assessment of its underlying value would remain equally favorable in the absence of that visible crowd enthusiasm. Question that, answered honestly, frequently reveals considerably more measured and more accurate judgment than the activated, contagious excitement of the present moment would otherwise suggest. There is, finally, a broader and more philosophical dimension to studying the law of covetousness closely, one that extends well beyond practical strategy into a deeper, considerably more humbling understanding of the actual mechanics underlying human desire itself. Most people move through their lives operating under the comfortable assumption that their measures reflect careful, independent assessment of genuine value, that they want what they want because of the inherent objective qualities of whatever they happen to desire. The law of covetousness reveals this comfortable assumption to be, in the overwhelming majority of cases, considerably less accurate than most people would prefer to believe. Our desires are shaped to a degree that should genuinely unsettle anyone who values intellectual honesty, by perceived scarcity, by social proof, by the visible desire of others, by the difference between what remains genuinely available and what has become contested or foreclosed, far more thoroughly than they are shaped by any independent, dispassionate assessment of inherent worth. This recognition carries a significant and, for many people, genuinely liberating implication. If desire itself depends so heavily on perceived scarcity and social validation, rather than on inherent, independent worth, then a considerable portion of human suffering, the suffering produced by unfulfilled longing, by comparison, by the persistent sense that satisfaction lies always just beyond whatever has currently been achieved, reflects not some genuine, accurate assessment of what would actually provide lasting fulfillment, but rather the mechanical operation of an ancient psychological system calibrated for conditions of genuine scarcity that, in the modern world, frequently no longer apply with anything like the force our wiring continues to assume. Recognizing this mechanism operating within your own mind offers, perhaps, the deepest and most valuable application of everything we have examined throughout this study. Capacity to step back, at least occasionally, from the reflexive, often exhausting pursuit of whatever currently appears scarce, contested, or just beyond reach, and to ask a more genuinely useful question, one that the law of covetousness, left unexamined, rarely permits us to ask with sufficient clarity. Does this object of my current intense desire actually possess the qualities that would provide genuine, lasting satisfaction if obtained? Or does its current appeal derive primarily from the simple, mechanical fact that it currently appears scarce, contested, or difficult to secure? Those who master this distinction, who learn to recognize when their own desire reflects the genuine, substantive qualities of whatever they pursue, and when it reflects, instead, the ancient, largely automatic mechanism of covetousness, responding to scarcity and competition rather than to substance, gain access to something considerably more valuable than mere strategic advantage in romance, negotiation, or status competition. They gain a measure of genuine freedom from one of the most persistent and most exhausting patterns shaping human unhappiness. The relentless pursuit of whatever currently appears just beyond reach, followed, with depressing reliability, by the rapid deflation of interest the moment that same object finally, securely, becomes one's own. And in that freedom lies something considerably more valuable than any single tactical advantage this law can provide. The capacity to direct your own finite ambition, attention, and longing toward what genuinely, substantively deserves it, rather than toward whatever the ancient, mechanical logic of scarcity happens, at any given moment, to be whispering into your ear.